and gentlemen, welcome to Kingdom of Kodiak. I'm Kodiak. This is episode 36, 9 months in the making. With me today is Grand Duke Sir Michael Hammer of God. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. Uh, I know that I kind of surprised you with the questions because I forgot to mention them to you. So they're all going to be a surprise. But the start of this would have never been there to begin with. Let's get to the bare necessities. Sorry, Sid. How long have you been playing Amtgard?
Uh, well, it's got to be 32 years any minute now. I started December of 88.
Wow.
So any minute now, it'll be 32 years.
Okay. And what brought you to Amtgard?
Well, my story on that is not super unique. Uh, some of my friends in college heard about it at an SCA event. They basically went to an SCA event and got recruited because they were looking longingly at the fighting, but they couldn't afford the armor.
Sure.
And they came back from the event and said, hey, we found out about this thing where it's like foam fighting with magic classes and that. And we want to go up to Austin and try it. I'm living in San Antonio, Texas at the time.
Okay.
Which Austin's about 90 minutes. And I can't remember what I had going on that weekend, but I did not go with them the first weekend.
Oh, okay.
So they started 1 week before I did, and one of them lasted 30 years in the game. He may be retired now. He may still not be quite retired. But for years, I joked that Roger started 1 week before I did. And they came back and they were totally jazzed about it. They thought it was the best thing ever. And so then we're reading rule books and making weapons and doing all those exciting newbie things.
Yes. That's great to hear. Can you give us some insight to the persona of MHOG?
So I have a persona backstory like everybody does. But well, I'll say my persona backstory is very simple. I was a Crusader knight who fell through a hole in the world and appeared in this other Amtgard world.
Oh, okay.
But
right.
I now consider that origin story to be not very important, because even if it was true, it's only the first 20 years of a 50-year-long life. You know, the real origin story is, who am I in Amtgard? What have I done in Amtgard? That's, and so when people go, who is Michael Hammer of God? I'm like, I am a respected Grand Duke of Amtgard, formerly a very good fighter and not so much anymore.
With an epic beard. We've already been called out for that.
Well, that's all right. You've got a great beard too, so that's you should know what they look like.
Were you always Michael Hammer of God? There's a story later on that may have not been your first Amtgard name.
So no, it wasn't. It wasn't. Like everybody, I didn't have much of an Amtgard name for a few months. But in that few months, so if we started in December, we played a little bit in San Antonio and back and forth to Austin during what would have been the spring semester of 1989. Then I went home to Colorado, which is where I grew up, during the summer of 1989. And while I was there, I met a guy named Rift, who was a former Burning Lander living in Colorado and trying to start Amtgard in Colorado. And I met him the way everybody found out about crap back then in ancient history. Somebody in the Burning Lands who I'd talked to once called me and gave me a phone number and said, you should call this guy Rift. He's in Colorado too. You guys might play. So I called him and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to get this thing started, but I've only got a few people. I'm like, well, I'll bring my friends here. We'll see what happens. And him and one of his good friends and me and one of my good friends and a fifth dude who was not close to any of us really, but had sort of found Amtgard and was interested in it, all drove to Clan. And I was Herm the Hermit at that time. That was my name.
Okay.
And I drove to Clan with these guys, and we had an amazingly good time. Just there's not much better than playing Amtgard with lots and lots of people,
Oh, absolutely.
especially when you're brand new and you've played a few of these 10, 15 person battle games, and then you go and see what's it like with 300 or 400,
Yeah.
which Clan had back then.
Yeah.
No place else had back then, but Clan did.
Mhm.
And it was eye-opening. And when I went back to Texas, I had this under my belt and I was excited about it. And then in that fall of 1989 timeframe, the Austin group, who was sponsoring us, left Amtgard to form High Fantasy Society.
Okay.
We decided not to leave and to stay in Amtgard, mostly because of how excited I was about Clan, or at least that was my argument for why we should stay.
Okay.
And there were other arguments, including that the people in Austin had not allowed us to vote on whether they should leave. They said,
Okay.
You're a sponsored park, you can't vote. In fact, we're not even going to let your guy talk and offer his opinion why we should stay. And so the next day when we're voting in our park, whether we go with our sponsoring group or we stay with Amtgard, I make all the arguments about how great Clan is. And then my friend goes, yeah, but they didn't even let him speak in Austin, so screw them. And I'm not sure which argument carried the day, to be honest.
Right. The day was carried, though.
Yeah, no, and we stayed and grew up to become the Celestial Kingdom.
That's awesome. What would you say is the award, and you've received many, or achievement that is you're the most proud of receiving?
Most proud of receiving.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of ways to take that, to be honest. I'll answer it and we'll just let it be taken one way.
Okay.
I think the one I'm proud of and believe in the most today might be my Crown Knighthood, but it's not the one I was proudest to receive, because back then, and that would have been 90, maybe 91, the Kapura said, when you step down as monarch, you get a Crown Knighthood. I was the first king of the CK, and I was terrible. And I stepped down, and I got a Crown Knighthood. And the next monarch was Sir Theo, who was an old Burning Lander, who'd actually seen how it worked and knew what he was doing. And he did a pretty good job, especially for what went on then. For what went on then, he did an amazing job. And I was like, oh my God, I screwed this pooch hard. And I had to make it my mission to go run again in a year or two and really do the best job the CK had ever seen to that date, so that I wouldn't forever feel like, man, you've got this belt you didn't earn.
Right.
And I've always been pretty good at the leadership part of Amtgard, but part of why I think it's the one I'm most proud of, it's the one that I had to defend to myself, because it was in the Kapura. Nobody else ever called me on it. Why would they? Right? I was getting it exactly by the rules.
Wow.
But I didn't do it.
That's a different time as far as that goes.
Yeah. It was the Wild West compared to today.
Yeah. It's still, wow. It's a great story to hear, though, because you're thinking about, like, as a newer player, the idea of just be in office, and the Kapora says you have it at that point, and you're openly admitting, like, I had a rough reign. Like, that's so different. But
well, and I don't even think we have a kingdom with, 60 or something people spread between two parks,
Mhm.
and one of those people knew my reign was terrible because the rest of us all had no idea what a good reign looked like. We'd never seen one.
That's fair. That's
We saw
fair.
my reign and we're all like, okay, I guess that's a reign. Then Theo did it and showed us what it should really look like. So after his reign, I think most people realized that my reign wasn't that good.
Okay.
But when I was in it and finishing it, I didn't know. Nobody knew. Well, Theo knew, but Theo was not the kind of guy to call me out and go, "That shit." When the job was getting done and the kingdom was going forward, he just said, "I'll fix it later," and he did.
Cool. Awesome. What's your favorite battle game?
So I love all battle games. I really do, and I've got a strong opinion what makes a great battle game.
Okay.
And my favorite battle games have all had this. I'll sort of answer your question after,
Okay.
but the key to a really good battle game is a really good prop. Okay. Something interactive that you use to be successful in the game. All of the best battle games have this because if your mechanic is walk one foot in front of the other to act like you're carrying the super heavy chest, that's not as cool as saying your team has this actual super heavy chest. Move it however you want. Okay. Now I'm not saying that these real props do not increase the risk level of our games, because they do, but they increase the fun level in many cases way out of the proportion to what they increase the risk level.
Right.
And my favorite battle game was probably it was definitely one of the Keep Castle battles. It was probably the second time we had two castles on opposite sides, and the Keep Castles are basically two towers with a gate in between, and we break the gate down with an actual battering ram. And then you have hay bale walls sticking out from the gate so you can't flank it.
Oh, cool.
And in the neighborhood of 600, 500 players, so you've got a huge army on both sides. That's that second castle against castle game. We had a unit, a fighting company from up here in our area, who built a siege tower and rolled out this siege tower, rolled it up next to the castle, and people would run up it and try and leap into the castle. And this castle's walls are 10 feet tall. So when we talk about increasing the risk, it's true. We have increased the risk, but the fun was out the roof.
Right.
And 10 feet, if you're a live guy, 10 feet, you can get on a guy's back and go over that in no time.
Yeah.
And they do. And literally, to defend the towers of the castle, you basically had to have two guys in tons of armor just up there wailing on everybody who tried to leap in.
Okay. I'm trying to envision this in my head. And
anyway, that's more than just the prop, right? It's got these awesome props. It's also got huge numbers. It's also got a lot of financial investment behind it, because you can do that with a huge event.
Sure.
So it's not fair to say, hey, this is the best battle game I've ever played. Every park should do that.
Right.
On the other hand, a maze that is real in some way, like has some visual blockers, is 5 times as good as tape walls on the ground.
Yeah.
And tape walls on the ground are still 5 times as good as nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not dissing tape. I've used tape a lot. And for usual, what are you doing in your average park day? That may be all you can afford. But the quality of the prop and making it interactive is my number one battle game belief.
Okay. When you're in these epic battle games, what would be the class you're playing?
So I've played a little bit of everything. obviously I've had the time to do it.
Right.
Um, in the current rule setup, I've done more Paladin than anything. But the fact is, I'm not amazing at V8. Maybe I should have been, but I was already a very good battle gamer under 7, and I had too much to unlearn. And I wanna give myself limited credit that I saw how good V8 was, and I never fought against it, even though I knew I might not learn it and be good at it. Okay,
Yeah.
because it's a huge upgrade. New people come in, they can get into it quick, they can get full enjoyment out of it quick. We have a lot less cases of old guys playing while new guys sit around and watch. So it's a huge upgrade, but I'm not great at it. Some of my best old school games were as healer, but healer was tactically critical when you had extra lives, and lives were a very scarce and very valuable resource.
Right. That makes
And
sense.
V8 healers are good, they're very powerful, but they're not tactically critical in the same way they used to be. That's called class balance. I'm actually in favor of it, by the way.
So Paladin is your V8 go. What's your kit for that? What are you bringing to the field?
So I have armor that is now only 3 points, but I built it under V7 to be 4.
Okay.
It's a lovely set of black leather, hardened leather with my heraldry all over it, white phoenixes and all that shit. It's very pretty. And sword and shield.
Okay.
And that's what paladins use mostly.
I mean, you're bringing a shield out there, but whatever, that's fine.
I mean, shields do not have the place they used to in the modern game, and I'm wise to that fact, but I like it.
That's fair. I'm just really bad at sword and board, so I. All right, that is the bare necessities. Sorry, Sin. We now have the 3 questions that have been asked every week on Kingdom of Kodiak by the viewers, and they just became part of the show.
Okay.
Okay. Kron would like to know, Sir Glenulf is looking for a toaster. He is also interested in possibly getting a soda maker. What is your stance on Sir Glenulf receiving a toaster or soda maker, or maybe both?
Well, I like Glenulf, and I think his contributions to Amtgard nationally are often overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
He's been unbelievably valuable for many years, and frankly, if they still gave toasters away at the bank, I would send him one tomorrow.
Okay, so
he ought to have a toaster, and he probably ought to have a soda machine too.
Okay, hey, KOK viewers, M Hog says toaster and soda maker, make it happen. 36 episodes in, we've got a lot of yeses for the toaster. The soda maker just came to play. This is a new part of it, but Michael says yes, so let's do that. Stillhat would like to know, are bears even real?
Okay, I'm going to tell a story here.
Okay.
Because no personal disrespect, because I recognize what your game name is, but among animals that I have a extreme personal distaste for, bears are near the top of the list.
Oof. Okay.
And here's why. I had a bear lock itself in my car. My car was a 2-door hatchback.
Okay.
Sort of a sports car thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the bear locked herself in. I heard the car horn honking when I was asleep in my bed. I looked out the window, and it was sort of rocking back and forth. I'm like, oh my God. So I went downstairs and to the door and started walking toward this car because she doesn't want to be in there. I don't want her in there. I'm going to try and see if there's a compromise. She lunges at the window, slams into it. Her mouth looks this big. Her eyes are totally dilated. I'm like, okay, there's no compromise here. I go back into the house. I call animal control. They come to deal with my bear problem. And it probably took a half hour or maybe probably an hour by the time they got there because it was a long way. And she was quiet. She wasn't exactly calm, but she wasn't thrashing as much.
Mhm.
So they had 2 deputies and 1 animal control guy. And I guess one of the deputies drew the short straw, but one of them got the job of opening the door. The other 2 got the jobs of the deputy got the job of have live ammo in case everything goes pear-shaped. And the animal controls guy's job was to shoot her with rubber buckshot to convince her that this is not a place she wanted to be. And I keep saying she because the animal control guy, using his expertise, diagnosed her as a 450-pound female after seeing her.
Okay.
Me, she just looked big as fuck, and I had no idea what her gender was. Sorry, I'm probably not supposed to curse here. I apologize.
No, by all means, do what you got to do.
But she runs off. No harm was done, and my car was completely ruined. Obviously.
Jesus. Well, Dragonspine is essentially ran by bears at this point, as we have many in the monarchy. I would like to be the first to say I apologize for all bear kind. I'm not sure if my fellow bear mates would feel the same, but that's because I am the best bear.
As long as none of them feel like they need to get into somebody's car, tear everything apart, poop and pee all over everything, then great. I think I can live without their apology. But if they do think that's okay, then they're the kind of bear I don't like.
Okay. Well, spoilers. We've got a couple more bear questions before we get to the real stuff.
Okay.
Who or what is your favorite bear?
My favorite bear, probably Walter Payton.
There it is. Hey, sweetness. I can go for that.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
I'm a Lions fan, but I can.
Wow.
You know,
It's hard. It's hard not to love Walter Payton. Even if you're a Lions fan.
Right. Would you consider yourself to be # Team Bear Squad?
No, I already clarified that I don't like bears. Now, I do like bear named amp garters. I have a number of good friends who are bear named amp garters. It's not quite the same as actual bears.
Well, that's the joke.
I know. I'm just I have to answer your questions as best I can.
Okay. This is the last question that isn't about you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Dragonspine having a mobile pool and or jacuzzi?
Have you figured out how you're going to finance it? Because if you have, yes.
Well,
absolutely, definitely.
We're not worried about the finances. We just want to make sure everyone's cool with it. And then, of course, the caveat question to that: would you allow bears into the hot tub or jacuzzi if Dragonspine had one?
So, I'm going to make a comment about bears and why you might not want to allow them in things. Bears are dirty, dirty animals. They do not wash. They've got lots of fur that can hold all kinds of crap, and I do mean that literally. And their odor is unimaginable. This car that the bear wrecked, I did not have the money for a down payment when it happened, so I was stuck driving this car after I cleaned 3 garbage bags worth of my car out of my car. And then I bleached everything. And then I ran new car smell through the air conditioning system just to make it drivable. So for 3 months, I'm driving this thing after this all happens. And even the day I'm driving it to get rid of it, from somewhere, somehow, in some dark, dark corner, you get this little waft of nasty bear and bear poo. It's not a thing you want to smell, and it's not a thing you want in your hot tub. That would be like the worst soup ever.
Oh, I did not know that this was going to be an anti-actual bear. Oh goodness. Okay. All right. Those are the general questions. Now we're actually going to hit some some Michael Hammer of God questions.
Oh, those were good questions. I like that. I always like to talk about the bear.
Okay. Darius would like to know, do you feel your impact on the AmpGuard community would have been the same had you kept your original persona name of Herm?
I don't know. That's hard to say. My guess would be that a lot of it would have been the same because
Okay.
it's more what you do than what people call you. But would it have been exactly the same? I don't know. Michael Hammer of God is a very good name. And it was intentional branding that I chose it when I did choose it. So it's difficult for me to now say, yes, I made this branding choice after being in the game a year or a little less. And it was a branding choice because the name Michael was because I had to cold call kids who might need to come to my park and answer the phone with their mother. And I don't want to say this is Dargoth the Destroyer. Is Tim there?
That's
And Hammer of God was so that people in El Paso and Dallas, who I didn't really like and I thought were ignoring our kingdom, would know who the hell I was. So it was an intentional branding choice, and maybe it was a good one, so it might matter. I like to say it doesn't, but I don't know.
I don't know. The way you talk about it, it sounds like it mattered quite a bit. But
well, I thought it might matter. It's a little bit like anything where you're trying to be successful, but you don't have a blueprint how to be successful. You throw everything you can at it.
Yeah.
And which part pushed you over, you don't know afterward. You just know it was enough in the end.
Okay. Sarandel would like to know, what are some of the pivotal moments in AmpGuard's history where you made the major difference?
That's a tough question.
It's Sarandel.
I understand. I feel like I shouldn't answer that question for Ben unless I can ask it of him, but that's okay. I'm gonna let it go. I don't know that the most pivotal thing that happened when I was in AmpGuard national leadership, I don't know that my being part of it actually made it any better.
Okay.
And that was when the Burning Lands gave AmpGuard to AmpGuard. That was really the Burning Lands choice, and the Burning Lands were being good and wonderful AmpGuard citizens there. And yes, I was smart enough to say, yes, please, that's great. We will absolutely meet your conditions and just do this and not argue with it. But that was such a no-brainer that I don't take a lot of credit for it, to be honest.
Okay. All right. I mean,
it's a pivotal moment in AmpGuard history for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the real key is that Diana Windsor and the Burning Landers deserve all the credit for that. Period.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
In terms of things that I was more involved in myself, Spring War and Keep on the Borderlands were both the biggest event in AmpGuard for, a 5 to 8 year period.
Mm-hmm.
And those were both events that I pushed and built up and babysat year after year to make sure they would be good and could grow to be great events that would successfully build up a wider culture outside one kingdom in their geographic area. And I'm reasonably proud of those two things, and I think those are good and useful.
Absolutely.
And then Sword Knight Boot Camp is what I consider my best contribution to AmpGuard. Now, there's a team on that too. You don't do anything good in AmpGuard without a team.
Sure.
You don't ever do anything good in AmpGuard without a team. But I was the guy doing the most work on the team for many of our early years. And it was very successful. I'm hoping we survive the pandemic. It's hard to miss a year. And we haven't figured out how to make sure we come back stronger, or at least as strong as ever. We did have a lot of engagement in our online content that we spread for like 2 months around when our scheduled SKBC time was. But it'll be interesting to see what we can do.
Okay. Well, just stay positive and keep on the grind, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not like we don't have plans to make it the best we can. It's just hard to predict.
Okay, that's fair. Sir Anatole would like to know if you could share one of your favorite AmpGuard memories. Slightly different question.
Favorite AmpGuard memories. Well, I'm going to cheat. And I'm going to tell a very recent one because there's lots of them. And I did a podcast with the Winner's Edge people. That was a similar format to this a week or two ago, 3 weeks ago. I can't remember. COVID, it's all, but fairly recently I did this.
Right.
And I talked about my knighting ceremony with them, my fourth belt ceremony. So if you'd like to hear things about me, you can go listen to their podcast. But this is a great memory that isn't me.
Okay.
My most recent squire to get knighted got knighted at Spring War literally the week that COVID is starting. Okay. We drove from Minnesota to Texas, and while we were on the way down there, colleges started closing down and the NBA closed down. And it's a week-long event. The event is in the middle of going on, so the event happened. But everybody went home directly into quarantine, including me. Like, it was right on the edge of COVID. And this squire is Sunshine, is Sir Lily Sunshine, Sir Death Lily Megatron Sunshine. And he was the friend I needed when I moved to Minnesota. That's just true. We did a lot of building the Kingdom of Polaris together. He was involved in a lot of my crazy keep projects. And he was just a very good friend to me, and the friend I needed, because he was 10 or 15 years younger than me. I could also coach him and mentor him in AmpGuard in ways that I think were very successful. The fact that he's such a good fighter, I don't think really is tied into that. I definitely see things he got from me, but he went and got a bunch of stuff from a bunch of other great trainers since then. And I don't want to ever claim too much credit for that part, because everybody walks their own path, and his path was his. But his favorite anime or favorite show of all kinds and any kind right now is My Hero Academia.
Okay.
So we did a My Hero Academia knighting for him. And I brought down a couple of giant big screen TVs and put them up behind the stage. And we had a little video package of him fighting interspersed with shots of My Hero Academia crap. And that played, and we had the music and all this, just a big multimedia presentation kind of thing. And then the actual ceremony is he had to stand there and take it as characters from the show who were, AmpGuard players dressed up in tunics from the show came out and attacked him, and he had to defend himself against each one. And then afterward, we give him one of the knighting gifts and explain how the show tied into AmpGuard, tied into knighthood. Oh. And it was sort of everything I'd hoped to really make a special knighting for someone who's very special to me.
Wow, that is that is awesome. Whew. Okay, I got to get back on track. I'm seeing it in my head, and I'm like, I want to be there. Sir Randall's back, and he has another question. What small moment where you feel like what is a small moment where you feel that you used your power for good?
So, I think a lot of the best times that there've been small moments to use your power for good. are the times when you use that power in some ways the least, right? I think you do the most good if you're a big famous Amtgard like me or like Randall, when you treat every new player the same. And you're going to a far park, you say, hey, you want to ride? You just take them, right? Or you say, dude, you're here at the park pretty late. Do you want me to give you a ride home, or you want to wait for your mom?
Mhm.
Okay. And then you wait with them if they want to wait, or whatever it is, right? But those moments where you remember you're not a fucking big shot, you're just a dude who plays Amtgard, and you go and treat your players that way,
Mhm.
those moments they're the most important, but they're also the ones where that power being negated makes them more valuable, right? If instead you go, oh, I'm a good leader, I got lots of contacts, I got people who owe me favors, hey, somebody take Johnny to this event, that also gets Johnny to the event,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have the same value. And I've done that a large number of times. Most recently, I can think of a couple of kids who, one of them's out of Amtgard, although she and I are still friends and we talk now and again.
Mhm.
And I know she would come back and fight if she had time. And then the other one is out of Amtgard because he went to the Marines. I think he'd love to come back once he's done doing his service.
Yeah.
But I was going 5 hours across our kingdom, and I just said, hey, I've got space. And they're like, well, he'd like to go. I'm like, great, come on. And that's a single moment, since that's what Ben asked for. But I think there's a lot of moments like that. And you make difference because both those people loved Amtgard a lot more because of what I did and got more out of it. And I think Amtgard in Polaris got a lot more out of it because those two liked it and put in their effort. Right? It pays for itself in the end.
For sure. Yeah. Wow. Use of power, not using it. That's
Well, not abusing it.
fair. That's fair. Morgan would like to know best amp garters and why is Sir Tristan on top?
Best Amtgarders?
Best dressed amp garters.
Best dressed Amtgarders? No, it's Goldcrest. It's always been Goldcrest. I mean, sorry, that might not be true because at any given court, there are some small selection of Amtgarders who can dress fancier than GC in court garb. But for field card, Goldcrest, always Goldcrest.
Okay. All right. Can you provide an example where Sir Tristan of the Burning Lands is the top? Ooh.
I don't know. I had very good experiences with Tristan back in the day. I would definitely record him as a good Amtgarder who I love. I'm not sure I can list where he's the top because I didn't have enough exposure to him to say for sure.
Okay. We're going to talk about Sir Tristan here in a minute. He asked some questions too, but we'll move on.
That's
Morgan
fine. I'm not trying to be mean.
No, not mean at all. Morgan would like to know your top 5 fighters of all time and then your top lefty.
Top 5 fighters of all time.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to do this, but somebody's going to put this podcast up and I'm going to get in fucking trouble. You're not winning any friends with this.
Fair enough.
But I'll start with the easy one.
Okay.
It's ATOG, and everyone knows it's ATOG. And if you think it's not ATOG, it's because you haven't fought ATOG recently.
That's fair.
So I've answered that question because it's easy.
Yep.
Top 5 fighters of all time. Let me caveat this with they're not in any order.
There you go.
I'm going to caveat it right there because I'm in trouble anyway.
No.
I refuse to let it get worse. My friend Harry, who's known as Arthon, we call the GOAT.
Mhm.
only partially in jest, because he is in fact the greatest of all time.
Okay.
Maybe not number one, but he's certainly in the top 5,
Okay.
and he might be number 1. And did you say Anatole asked this question?
Yeah. No. Morgan asked the question.
All right. I'm not going to tell a dirty story on Anatole because he didn't ask.
Okay.
So Leaf is in the top 5 still. He had some fucking warlock witchcraft shit that there's only a few people who can actually duplicate, and he had it when nobody could duplicate it.
Right.
So Leaf is still on the list. Spin is on the list. I'm not quite sure where he is on the list because he was not as clean as he should be. And it's really hard to judge how good a fighter is when he's not as clean as he should be. But Spin was extremely gifted, and more than any of the others, devoted to figuring out the mechanics in a way he could teach it to other people.
Mhm.
And Amtgard owes him a debt of gratitude for that, for sure. Delos is in that list, and Delos more recently has gotten into the teaching game in a huge way. And he's probably our most valuable fighting resource right now, in my opinion. I'm real big on Delos. And the 5th slot, I'm gonna let Anatole have it because I like him, and he's probably his. Okay, it really is. I know he's listening, so I'm not just sucking up. He probably is, but it's harder to say. And the real truth is, I could put another 5 guys on this list who would all belong just as much as the 5 I gave you. And it's worth noting that 4 years ago, when I was very sick, I probably knew for sure which one of these guys was where compared to me. But that's not the same as compared to the field.
Right.
And that data is 4 years old because I can't fight like I used to. And if you're not pretty damn good, you can't really judge the difference between Anatole and Delos. Right? They both beat you, and you saw some of what they did. But if you didn't see every bit of it, it's hard to call.
Sure. Makes sense.
And I'll give an honorable mention to Eggman, because if he hadn't been hurt, he could easily have been all the way to the top. Like, he lost his right arm for years at a time.
Right.
It makes a big fucking difference.
Yeah. So you said Atog's the best fighter. He's also a lefty. Does that make him...
I said he was the best lefty. I didn't say he was the best fighter.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
You asked me 2 questions at once, and I'm like, one of them is easy. I'm answering the easy one.
Okay. All right.
And I assumed your listeners knew he was a lefty. So when I'm answering one question, I should have been clear.
Well, I mean, Morgan's a lefty, so he was probably like really excited to hear a lefty called first. I'm lefty, so I'm excited to hear a lefty called first.
Hey, I'll tell you my Atog story, because it makes Atog look a little good, and it makes me feel very good.
Okay.
At Keep last year, we didn't have him this year, so it was last year. At Keep last year, we had 30 minutes. I was the autocrat, so I only had 30 minutes of ditching. It seems like I didn't have very much ditching, but we had 30 minutes where Delos and Megiddo, who's one of Delos' senior students, were holding one end of the line. And on the other end, on the other end of the other line, it was me and Atog. And I'm not commenting on whether Delos beat Atog more than Atog beat Delos or not. I don't know. I just know the 2 of us beat the 2 of them more than they beat us.
That's great. Okay, cool. Sir Anatole is back, has another question. On a scale of 10 to 10, how much do you love being the Hog Father?
Well, the fact is, I'm gonna say it's a 10 because I'm willing to play by Anatole's rules. But I will throw a little bit of context in, which is 20 years ago, I really didn't like when my name was whatever random crap people made up, and I got fussy if they called me Mikey Hog or even M Hog. I just wanted to be Michael, and I really got fussy, and I just don't care anymore. And the Hogfather came at a time when I didn't care anymore. So it's always been a 10.
I would have thought having the opportunity to be called M-Hog would have been something you were shooting for. But I could call you Michael.
I honestly don't care anymore. 20 years ago, I cared. Maybe even 15 years ago, I cared. I don't care anymore.
Morgan would like to know, how do you feel about the cultural state of AmpGuard pre-COVID?
Well, AmpGuard was shrinking pre-COVID, although almost all social organizations were shrinking pre-COVID.
Mhm.
That was not a healthy place for us because it was happening to everybody. I'm not quite sure what our solution would have been, but I was worried about it. I'm hoping that the post-COVID bounce will help a little bit. You and I talked about this on the air, so I'll mention it again. The last time, or maybe not I think it was the last time, but certainly one of the times AmpGuard experienced nationwide growth at great rates was the last time that D&D was big. And D&D is big again.
Yes.
So maybe we come out of COVID, we're going to be able to really rebuild. I hope so. Otherwise, the cultural problems in AmpGuard, and there are some, are mostly, to my mind, institutional ones that we have fixed a little bit over 30 years. And we really have. Like, let me be clear. But they require more fixing.
Is there any of those specifically that you could point out as over, because he does ask about the differences between 5 and 10 and 20 years ago. What are those institutionalized issues that AmpGuard's still dealing with that we've made progress on that we need to continue to focus on?
Well, I can easily answer some of the historical stuff,
Okay.
right? At Clan 10, we didn't throw people out of the game for one beating the other hard enough that the other had to knife him to defend himself. Neither one of them got thrown out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And today they would both go.
Yep.
And everybody would think they should both go, and there'd be no arguments about it.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, we are light years above.
Mm-hmm.
I think even at most events, most people could go into a campsite with a fighting company they didn't know very well without any risk.
Yeah.
That wasn't true in the 90s. It just wasn't. Okay. And we're much better for that. So there's been positive growth, and it's obvious and blindingly obvious. On the other hand, I said most people. I don't want it to be most people. I want it to be all people. Yeah. Okay. And I don't think it is all people. Okay. So that's sort of the kind of thing I'm thinking about. And it's real. We've made progress on it. We have more progress to make. And I love that the COM is going to go and rewrite the award standards. A lot of the stuff they're trying, my bitter old man sense says we tried that. But then I remind myself, and this is something that the older I get, the more I have to remind myself. If you tried an idea and it failed 10 years ago, and a new kid has the same idea and thinks it's cool, you probably shouldn't fight against him, because he might have something that he can do that can make it work when you couldn't, and you thought it was cool 10 years ago. Yeah. Okay. So it's much more important to go, okay, I'll tell the kid, hey, here's what happened when we did it, but then support him, because these retread ideas are often the best ones. They may be unworkable. Like, you might not be able to fix it, and it might fail again this time. And maybe it's that guy who has to help the guy 10 years from now push it through. but you should not fight against ideas just because they failed before. And it's super important for bitter old men. And you've already mentioned a few guys asking questions who I would call bitter old men, Isaac Ben. Don't be that guy.
Okay. I only take slight offense because I'm actually older than Isaac, but that's besides the point.
Are you as bitter as Isaac?
Well, no. But
All right, then.
I'm not as good of a fighter as him either. So, Darius would like to know: 12 Kingdoms in 12 months. Would you do it again?
Well, first, let me say I didn't do it the first time. I almost did. I was very close, and I'll take credit for that. But to answer the real question, I'd have to retire first. It's the money would be no harder now than it was then, but the energy and the motivation to do all that, and I didn't have animals then, and I got animals now. I would feel terrible leaving the animals, and 12 times in 12 months, I'd be rough for them. So if I was retired, I could swing it, and I would do it. I mean, if I was in a position where I could retire tomorrow and COVID was gone, I would probably try and play Amtgard in all 50 states.
Wow.
I've got, last time I counted, I've got 28 or something. So barely over half. And I'd like to finish the others. And I gave that dream up in the last 3 to 5 years because I realized it's just impossible. But if I were to retire tomorrow, I could do it. And then I would.
You got to put that challenge out to someone, though. That's a really cool goal to have. Anatol's back. Sir Anatol would like to know, how long have you been a torch?
Anatol, at the same time, I am as much a torch as I am a wheel, and I believe that firmly.
I get that. Okay, sure.
That's answered his question.
Okay. Lady Stillhat would like to know, what is your opinion on role play in Amtgard?
I like Amtgard role play, and I'm not opposed to it. I think the most telling analysis of Amtgard role play was probably written 20 years ago on ESEM. Thank you, Ben, for that lovely venue. And he didn't write it. It was written by a guy out of Texas named Kensuke. But he basically pointed out that a good role-playing environment is a little bit like a hothouse flower. You've got to give it all kinds of perfect situations, lots of effort, keeping it perfectly watered and keeping the temperature exactly right, and the exact right amount of sunlight, the exact nutrient mix for it to be successful. And ditching's a little bit like a weed. Like
anywhere,
if it's there, it will just appear, and there's no getting rid of it.
I get
And that whole thing describes almost perfectly what I see as how Amtgard roleplay works. Is when somebody puts in the time to really build a good framework for roleplay, it's fantastic. But it's so much effort to do that it doesn't happen very often.
That's fair.
And I don't know anybody who has solved the conundrum of how do you make it quick and easy. I will throw something out that I mentioned this on the Winner's Edge podcast too. So if anybody double dips, I'm sorry for repeating content. But this is a thing that comes up in my head whenever I think about role play. One of the best Midwest role play events. It was well known as a role play event and believed to be a great place to go to role play. Literally was not written as a role play event. It was written as a military simulation. Okay, the guy who organized it, ran it, put in all the backbreaking work to make it happen, was trying to do a military simulation. He was a vet. And why it was so good for role play is lives were a precious, precious resource. You got 4 for the weekend.
Ooh.
And when you get 4 lives for a weekend, you look for all the solutions that are not hitting the other guy with a stick, because he might hit you with a stick. and you might lose one of those precious resources. And it made an amazing role play event because of that. And I had a little working crew of people who grew up under V8, you know, guys who were 7 years in the game, working with me to try and figure out how to do that under the V8 rubric.
Mhm.
And we did not solve all the problems. There were too many problems to solve.
Okay.
I'm not saying we might not have made it happen if we had more time to solve the problems, but a lot of the things we felt like we needed to paper over the fact that it's a big change to V8 to make lives a precious resource. Well, one way you could solve that is have a really good site that sort of that covers that up, because you've got this amazing site,
Mhm.
but that's expensive and hard to find.
Yeah.
And we had a bunch of these kind of things of, hey, this would help paper it over. But the problem is it's a big change to V8, and V8 is what we play and what we love. So we couldn't solve it. And I'm not saying we might not go back to it, but we've shelved it for now.
I got some ideas in that, but we'll let that go for now. Stillhat would also like to know, do you like monsters? But I want to switch the question. What is your favorite monster in Amtgard?
So I'm going to answer the first question, even though you said you're switching it,
Okay.
because I have a policy here.
Okay.
This is a role play thing. Okay. Michael Hammer of God, there's 2 pieces of role play that have always been part of Michael Hammer of God's role play character. Number 1, I'm not an anti-paladin.
Okay.
I don't play it. I don't take credits in it. In fact, I call the orc people and make them remove it if anybody slips a credit in there for me.
Okay.
I'm not an anti-paladin. And number 2, I don't like monsters. That doesn't include orcs and hobgoblins. Those are people. Okay. But vampires, dragons, the undead in general, those are monsters. I don't like them, and I'm here to kill them. That's my job.
Okay.
I don't like them. So given that, my favorite monster, I don't know, probably the one I had the most fun playing was, is it a wraith? Whichever undead has a pole arm that you get to recharge your abilities by killing people with. It's totally gross.
No, okay. All right. I guess I didn't need to ask the question because you don't like monsters to begin with. Have you there is Michael Hammer of God like artifacts and magic items all over Amtgard. People have tied your name to a lot of different magical items.
If by people you mean the V8 committee, yes.
Well, they are people, I hope.
And I had friends on that committee. I think it was a tribute rather than a clever joke, to make if not the most powerful relic, but one of the most powerful relics named after me. Okay. I mean, there's an Andalasa's Lament in the rule book, but it's not as cool a relic. So Randall can probably leave the house without having a brand new kid go, "Oh my God, I want your hammer." and I'm not upset. I mean, like I say, I think it was a friendly gesture from my friends on the committee.
Okay. Well, the question then is, have you ever made a magical item for a quest or a game that you're like super proud of that you would like to share about?
None of them are around anymore.
Okay.
The best one I made was the old what was the rulebook hammer? Was it Odin's hammer? Was the hammer that used to be in the rulebook? I think. Anyway, there was always a relic hammer in the rulebook. And I made, before I saw anybody else make it, a hammer that handled like a sword. Okay. It's got a pretty small head. It's got a long flat blade shaft that is legal. And the head may come off and break, but otherwise it basically handles like a sword, meaning that you can fight with it like a sword rather than having something that's very top heavy and doesn't handle right with the mechanics of our speed of light game.
Mhm.
And I was proud of that design, and the hammer looked good and handled great. It didn't have the durability it should have because I wasn't a great weaponsmith then, and I'm not now.
Okay. um, okay. Deviating a little bit from role play, we want to talk a little bit about your gear that you're wearing in the field. Saranda would like to know which of your tunics is your favorite.
So my very favorite tunic right now is probably a little too nice to wear onto the field.
Okay.
And I don't. But it's a handmade creation from Lady Armstrong, which I had to pay a pretty penny for. It was worth every dime because she does amazing work. Um, it's got a full chest white tiger on the front. It's got baby tigers on the sleeves, which to me sort of represents me mentoring the younger kids in my fighting company.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back, it's got my crossroads and hammer symbol. And the rose is growing out of a jungle that grows all the way around the bottom of the tunic. And in the jungle, there are 4 flowers that are all orchids from the Indian subcontinent that all have names that are like one of the orders of knighthood.
Okay.
Like there's a fire orchid, and I can't remember what the others are. They're not flame, rose, whatever. Sorry, not flame, serpent, whatever. But they're similar.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
and
cool.
Lady Armstrong went and did this, and it's not quite photorealistic, but it's very close. And the tiger is exceptionally good because when her skill in applique, and I think she's one of the most talented applique artists we've ever had, ran out, then she painted. So it's a mix of applique and paint. And it's a gorgeous piece. The funny story is that I've been friends with Lady Armstrong since before she played Amtgard. Originally, she was a bell player, and I was a bell player when I was living in Wisconsin. I was a weekly bell player and went to lots of bell events. So I knew her and her family, and I would have considered her a bell friend for a long time before she got into Amtgard. And then when she started taking commissions, I kept telling her, "Yeah, I got to get on your list." And I never got a design to her and made it happen. So I'm not blaming her at all, but I just never got on the list. And then they had a charity auction for Food Fight one year, and I bought the top of her list.
Awesome. Cool.
And then once I bought the top of her list, then I was able to make myself get it done.
Nice. Would like to know what's your favorite chain weave?
Did you post the picture?
The of you for the KOK?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys can go look at that one. That's gorgeous. I didn't make that one. That was made by Sir Raphael, but it's a hand done design he got to show off the 4 colors that I think's gorgeous. That's one of my current favorite chains to wear. In terms of chains to make, I love to make the half Persian because it's easy to make and it's extremely pretty. Okay. So it's something you can bang out quickly. I've made them on the way to events more than once. In fact, I think I made one for Randall on the way to an event.
Fantastic. Serious question here. Again, what is imposter syndrome, and why can't I like my own work enough to submit it into competition?
So this is a tougher question for me to answer because I'm blessed or cursed with a towering ego. I keep it under control by mostly believing that nobody else should be subjected to it. But I've been lucky that I've rarely had imposter syndrome. Okay. So I want to, whoever I'm answering this question for, I want to be clear. I'm going to give you my best answer, but I'm not the best person. Okay. But the answer is none of us is really great at evaluating our own work. And it's more true the better we are at something. Okay. If you're exceptionally gifted as a fighter, you know where you made your mistakes.
Mhm.
And it's very easy for you to analyze them and go, God, I fucked that up. I fucked that up. And if you just lost to one of those 5 guys I listed earlier and you beat absolutely everybody else, you could still go home thinking, God, I suck, without really thinking through the fact that, no, you did fine. You lost one because the other guy had a better day today. And let's analyze what you did wrong and how you fix it so it's less likely to happen in the future. But understand, those guys are at the top of the game too. They're going to fix what they did wrong, and it's going to be a different fight next time. You have to fix what you did wrong. And so when you extend that to the arts, and I talked about fighting because that's where I know it best, and where I've been so damn excellent that sometimes I can compare myself to the very best. I've got a Serpent Knighthood, and I believe in my Serpent Knighthood. I think I absolutely earned it. But the fact is, I'm not one of the top 50 amp card artists. I'm just not.
Okay.
And so I don't compare myself to the top 50 amp card artists and go, hey, where am I? Instead, I go, okay, in the things I'm really good at, how do I do my very best? How do I enter them in a competition in a way that they will do the best they do? And how do I move on when they get judged in ways I disagree with? And that has happened to me. I'll be truthful, towering ego or none. My knighthood trees are something I really believe in, and I think they're a great way to tie together a belted family, and I'm a big fan of them. And one of the times I put them in competition, the judges were brutal. They just didn't like the idea and felt like the mistakes in execution, which they did find, invalidated the thing. And I disagreed with that, and I was angry for a little while. And part of me was like angry, but the other part of me was like, God, I thought this was a great idea. Where did I fuck it up?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think imposter syndrome can happen to anybody, even somebody with a towering ego, but I'm no expert.
Still great advice, though. Thank you for that. So Tristan would like to know, do you support the proposed changes to the Sword Knight qualifications? And he wants to specify he's asking as a non-warlorded Sword Knight.
So I'm going to answer the question the way I have convinced myself the answer is.
Okay.
My gut tells me that we're going too far, but I don't think it's my business as a 53-year-old guy who's never going to walk this path again to do more than offer advice.
Okay.
And I offered that advice to my comm rep, which is how I should offer that advice. And that's where it ends for me. Okay. I like the direction. I think it may have gone too far as a personal matter, but it's not a thing I think I should fight about because it doesn't matter for me. It's not my business.
Sure.
And I literally want the 30-year-olds to be running AmpGuard right now. AmpGuard is not better off when the 50-year-olds run it. The 50-year-olds should get the fuck out of the way.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So that gets us through the general conversation. We have two topics left, and this one is called knightness. It's all about your knighthoods. Um, well, mostly. There's some advice questions in there as well. Eliza
Okay.
Joy would like to know what did you what got you started in each belt?
Okay. That's a great question. And I'm going to start by pointing out that it was the wild freaking West back then. Okay. I think it was pre-stream that I said that Arcapura in the early 80s, 90s
Mhm.
said when you step down as monarch, you get a crown belt.
Okay.
Like that was in the Kapura. So I wanted to be king because I believed in the project that we were trying to build the first multi-part kingdom in Amtgard. And it was at a time when the Burning Lands was not in favor of multi-part kingdoms. They thought they were a bad idea. And I wanted it to be successful. I was super invested emotionally in the mission. So I was excited about doing it. And I wasn't so much excited about the knighthood. I got the knighthood after getting it, after being monarch. And I was actually a very bad monarch. None of us knew better. It was a brand new kingdom. Nobody had any idea what a good monarch looked like, but I wasn't. And the next guy was actually the one guy in the kingdom who did know. I was Sir Theo, who was originally a Burning Lander. So he'd already been down this road and he knew. So when he stepped up and did the job I should have been doing, I was like, oh my God, I kind of shit the bed here. And that drove me to earn the knighthood I already had. Not, it didn't drive it. Nobody else was beating me up about it. It was in the Kapora. Nobody was gonna go against that, but I knew. Okay, and and maybe that's a little bit to the imposter question syndrome question too. I knew I was a shitty monarch who shouldn't have a knighthood. If knighthood was going to have any cachet at all, it shouldn't go to people who do that. And I made it my mission to analyze what all the monarchs after me did. And when I was the seventh king of the CK, so there were 5 in between me and me, I blew that job away, and I was the best kingdom monarch we'd seen. I stole all the good ideas I saw out of the Emerald Hills, threw in a bunch of my own good ideas, and really tried to elevate the whole kingness thing. Now, again, this is still the mid 90s, so by modern standards, I was probably not that great, but at least I didn't have trouble sleeping at night afterward.
Right.
So that's long enough on that one. Sword, I always wanted to fight. Like it's always been. All the parts of Amtgard are important, and I'm not saying fighting is more important. I'm just saying it was more important for me.
Okay.
And you don't want to fight unless you want to be good. And there's a camaraderie among people who are good at Amtgard and serious about Amtgard that I've rarely seen, and I mean the fighting part. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but that kind of camaraderie, it's different, and I love that, and I wanted to be part of that. But that was the Wild West too, because I got that a couple of years after my crown belt, which in the modern world we know that's sort of crazy talk.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody to be as committed to both those things to get them 3 years in and 5 years in, that's just not how it happens in the real world today.
Right.
Flame, I always knew I was going to get a flame belt. I was passionate about Amtgard and working hard, and I was convinced that one day I'll run enough events, do enough cool things, provide enough value to the game that somebody will give me a flame belt. And my only driver on that was I really wanted to get it on lions before I got it on roses. Now, back in the day, lions still combined with griffins, so I got a little bit of leg up because I had a few griffins. But Every event I was in charge of, my goal was, let's make this so good that they have to give me a lion, not a rose.
Cool.
What can I do to elevate and really make this happen?
Right.
And then the last belt, I like the AmpGuard arts, and I always did them, especially the ones I enjoyed. But let me be truthful. Two of the ones I enjoy are writing, which are constantly poorly evaluated by judges. And I know why, because nobody can actually read and absorb something in the chaotic atmosphere of an event. When I've entered writing pieces that get judged in the week leading up to the event, the scores are 30 times more consistent. Okay, they're just all over the place when you do them at the park, and I don't judge the poor judges for that. I've done it myself, and I have a hard time doing it too.
Mhm.
And then I always liked heraldry and bright display, and I've got a great sense of design. So those things I've always liked doing, and I've done those. So I wasn't worried about having the skill to do it, but I just didn't care very much. And I was like, I'm in AmpGuard for all these other things. And then I went to Spring War the year that Theo got his 4th belt. And I saw the whole kingdom come together, and just how much that belt meant to him and to all the people of the CK. And I was living in the Iron Mountains then. So I basically decided on the way home from that, I'm just going to see if I can't do that. And I'll make all my best stuff for several tournaments and see if I can get there, because I'd like to be part of that.
Awesome. So that's how you got started in each. Is there a piece of advice that you would be willing to give for each of them to anyone trying to go down that path?
I'll give a couple. I'm not sure I can get all of them.
Okay.
So for Crown, it's really important to step up and be there, but it's not just that. Okay. And I've heard other people talk about Crown and go, hey, the important thing is we just need people to hold the offices, because otherwise the whole group falls apart. So just step up and do it. And I don't think that's enough. I think you've got to go in with a plan and really try and make your mark on your kingdom for your 6 months, or on your park for 6 months, or it's not worth doing. On the other hand, I think drive is almost enough to carry you over the line in Crown. Okay. And I don't think it is on the other 3, including Flame, by the way. I don't think just drive is enough, but often drive is enough on Crown, because that drive comes through to other people. If you're excited, they're excited.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're excited, you can get them to do a lot of the heavy lifting to make the reign successful. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, skill matters some, and I'm not saying skill is negligible, but I think you can replace skill with excitement in Crown more than in any other. And then my advice for Sword is, it's a long goddamn grind. Like, if you want to get it done, you've got to ask yourself, the day you want to get it done, will I want to get it done in 2 years? 2 years from now, when I've seen progress but not enough progress, will I still want to get it done?
Mm-hmm.
4 years from now, when I've seen progress but not enough progress, and it's a cold day in January, will I want to get it done?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to scare people off this, because everybody's grind is going to have some of those days where you can't do it. But if you're not pretty sure that most of those days you're going to say yes and make yourself do it, you should consider whether it's too much.
That makes sense.
That's why I like the direction of the new knighthood proposal, by the way.
Good. Okay. Eliza Joy would like to know about the idea of being stonewalled in award progression. What do you tell someone who feels like they've met that?
So this is advice that I think is classic, so everybody's probably already heard it. But in my life, it has proven to be true, and I've seen some of my squires do it too, and therefore I feel very good giving it, even though it's almost cliche.
Okay.
If you feel like you're being stonewalled, it's because you believe that someone is giving you an award. You should never believe they're giving you an award. You should believe you're taking the award. Okay? If the question is, if I run this event, is it good enough for my 10th rose? I don't know. What are you doing to make that event good enough for your 10th rose? Okay? Almost any project could be good enough for a 10th rose, but let's be honest. If your project is picking up trash, there'd be a lot of trash at a big event with a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you can be the one to decide to some extent, I'm going to add scope to what I'm doing here and make it bigger and better and cooler. And there will be cases, and I don't know Eliza, so I have no idea if these cases have happened to her, but there are cases where you do all that and you still get missed, but there's not many. Most of the times when you get missed, it's not, especially for a high level, it's not because the monarch was careless or dumb. It's because the monarch made a difficult decision and decided you were just the other side of the line. And the best way to avoid that happening is leave the line in the fucking dust.
Yep.
Then it doesn't happen. And again, I know that's cliched advice.
No, I agree. I would suggest that if that's where you feel like if you're shooting for a 7th or 8th in a category, then if that's what ward you're at, you're shooting too low. Shoot at 10, put the work in to shoot for 10, and force the monarch to decide, was this worth one level of an award, or was this so amazing that I have to consider a second order in that same thing on the spot? The idea of just going into it to hit the bare minimum to hit the award, you're going to fall short almost every time. I agree. All right. Now that I'm off my box, let me get back down here. Still would like to know, how do you feel about the changes to the crown belt qualifications? So this will be going from the point system to the orders of the crown.
I like it. I think it was inevitable. I actually think we held off too long because we were worried about legacy problems, which, I mean, the legacy problems were real, and I don't know what your kingdom did, but our kingdom had to have a committee to go through and analyze every player and figure out what their award ought to be and just deal with it. And I assume most kingdoms had to go through that process. It was well worth it. It was a great change.
Yeah, I got to sit in when that was brought in. I was in this the COM meetings just as a populist member, and it was very exciting. I was getting prepared for my opportunity to be a monarch, and I wanted to see what was going on, and it felt very historic when it happened. For anyone who doesn't know, it happened, came off the table, and happened again before it was actually approved that day. So it felt historic, and then it felt like your wind was taken from you, and then it was historic again. It was fantastic. Still would also like to know, how do you feel about the female struggle in the Sword Knight path?
I think today in the modern world, we have to acknowledge that there should be a separate division for female fighters, and that they should get awards for it, same as everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean our very best female fighters can't also fight in the men's category. I'm sort of willing to let the small minority who want to do that. But I've been lucky in the fact that I've been friends with many of the best women fighters in the history of AmpGuard. Not all of them, but many. You know, my generation coming up, we had Squeak, and Squeak and I were friends. And I knew Squeak had struggles and was mistreated, but I recently talked to her and I had no idea how bad it was in the 90s. Like, I knew it was bad, but I just had no idea. And I'd like to hope it's not that bad now. And then I'm good friends with Sundari, who's another fighter who's been working hard for many years as a woman to try and be successful. Kiara, I work with on the FLAC committee. That's another one. So I'm lucky that over generations, I've had a number of very serious female fighters as friends, and I used to be guided by them when my female fighters who were friends of mine would say, "Nah, we should just tough it and get it through the men's category." I'd be like, "Okay, that's fine." Now most of the ones that I have any conversations with change their mind, so I'm still guided by them.
I am honored to say that Dragon Spine passed the Kapora amendment that allowed us. We are standardizing female and non-men tournaments in our our tournaments and whatnot. So, and that was headed by Sir Anatole and Sir Xian and Sir Sane. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm on the right side of history, but I think almost everybody is, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things where you're talking, it's most people, but it's not everyone. This is almost entirely everyone at this point. Almost entirely everyone is on the same page, and that feels really good.
I agree.
I still would like to know, what's your belt family called?
I do not have a last name that we call them or anything. Colloquially, we refer to it as the tree, because each one of them, and I've been doing this for 8 years, something like that, 9 years. Each one of them gets a scroll that goes up on their wall that has a tree with me at the bottom, and then my squires, the first row of branches, and then their squires and their squires and their squires. And I farmed out making the tree to one of my squires in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Because I was too sick to get it done part of the time, and then he just picked it up, and he's been doing it as a favor since then. God bless him. But I swear the last time he made one, there were 70 people on it, and that's no pages. We only put knights and squires on there.
Oh, we're going to talk about the tree here in a minute. Okay. We're almost done with your night questions. Sir Randall would like to know if you could tell us about your most distantly descended grand squire and how many great, etc. grand squires are there?
Well, there's 70. I already answered that.
Yeah, no. Right. Yeah.
So I think the most distant now is 7 or 8. I'd probably have to pull up the graphic. And as I said, my Squire Maricus picked it up, so I don't have it on my computer to pull up right now. Okay. Otherwise, I'd pull it up and check, but I can't do it. I'm sorry.
So Sir Randall was also wondering later in the questions, but I'll get to it now, if there's a chance that maybe not today, but at some point you could share that to the Dragon Spine page so we can see what a Michael Hammer of God family tree would look like.
Yeah, no, I'll ask Merrick for the most current. If not, I can share one that's a couple years old, because I've got Augustus's, I'm sure, around.
Okay, and you already kind of mentioned talking to us about giving out the tree line, so we can go past that. As a 4-belted knight, what do you look for when someone is upcoming as a knight or look as a candidate for knighthood?
So I'm going to give you the simple answer, and then I'm going to ask one more. I'm going to add one more clarifying piece, and I'm not trying to scare candidates. I promise. The simple answer isn't scary at all. The simple answer is I ask myself, if AmpGuard had 3 of this person, would we be better off?
Mhm.
And if the answer is yes, and they're qualified, then you should think really hard about why there'd be any reason not to knight them.
Right.
Okay. I mean, if the answer is you'd be better off with 3 of them and they're qualified, it's hard not to knight them. Then I'm going to throw out my one caveat. I've rarely used this, and I understand why it's problematic, but I think the knighthood has a duty to vote their conscience. So I think it is not unacceptable for a knight to vote no on someone who is qualified, who they do not believe has shown the mastery skills. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know there are other knights who do not agree with that standpoint. And because I've done it so infrequently over 32 years, I'm not sure it matters, but philosophically, I still believe it. And I promise I'm not trying to scare any candidates.
It's not a problem. All right, Michael, we are in the last category, and these are the funny questions. These are the questions that my viewers ask that for some reason everyone wants. So you're getting them.
All right, that's fine. I'm here to give the people what they want.
There it is. Still would like to know, what is your favorite cereal?
Well, I don't eat cereal anymore because it's not good for me. Probably the cereal I've eaten most recently in any significant amount is Puffins, because it's the one that my sister's kids like.
Okay. A little caveat to Morgan's question before I ask it. It was confirmed in previous episodes that cereal is a soup. So, can you be the final authority on confirming that cereal is in fact a soup?
Well, I don't get to eat soup very much anymore, except if I make it myself.
Okay.
Because in addition to not being allowed carbs in that, I'm also not allowed salt. You can't get salt. You can't get soup anywhere without a lot of salt in it.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that you make cereal more soup-like by putting salt in it, which is probably ill-advised.
So no confirmation here.
I'm just offering an opinion.
Okay. Morgan would also like to know, if you could meet anyone in history, dead or alive, who would it be and why? Is it Freddie Mercury?
All right, it would be cool to meet Freddie Mercury. I'll admit that. If I could meet anybody in history, alive or dead, I'm just going to say, fine, I'd love to meet Freddie Mercury and just leave it at that. Although, let me be truthful. I'm a 53-year-old straight man. I could never keep up with Freddie Mercury. I'd have no chance. It would be interesting to watch him for an evening, but I couldn't keep up.
I don't want to say it, but I feel like I have to at this point. You are the same exact age as my dad. And
well, could your dad keep up with Freddie Mercury?
Hell no.
Well, there's the problem.
Still would like to know, what is a furry?
That one is.
Oh,
that one's furry.
Doggo.
His name is T, and he's very furry. Well, anyway, that's the best answer I got.
Final question, Michael. Are birds real, or did Dragonspine fall into the classic blunder?
I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
Birds are real, and Dragonspine did fall into the classic blunder.
Okay. All right. It seems like that would be the right answer. We're still trying to figure it out down here if birds are real. So.
Well, I'm making my best guess. The answer is yes and yes.
Fantastic, Michael. If you could just spare me a couple minutes, I'll make the announcements for the end of the episode, and then we'll go ahead and say our goodbyes. KOK viewers, if you're listening, the newest V9 survey is out. Dragon Spine is offering 2 credits for anyone who completes it and sends a screenshot of their finished page along with what credits they would like. Additionally, there's a new amendment out that will essentially be the final steps to the transition to a fully floated crown and Dragon Spine. Please review that, and send your vote to either your local PM or Lord Tajima, the Kingdom PM. This weekend, our Regent Lady Stillhead is going to have her first artist spotlight on Discord. So be looking for the schedule for that tomorrow. And I think that's all the announcements I have. Michael Hammer of God, Sir Michael Hammer of God, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You historically have hit the 9-month mark of consecutive weeks of KOK.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
That's very exciting.
You did a good job on this interview. I hope your people like all of them, because you seem to be having a good time here. And
I have a
for
blast.
inviting me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for inviting me. Also, I will shout out Ben and Isaac, because they've been great friends to me for most of my 32 years. They're good people. You're lucky to have them.
Absolutely. I think about that every day. All right. Until next time, I've been Kodiak. This has been Kingdom of Kodiak. Goodbye.